Alright, let's jump right in, shall we? Today we're diving deep into some of the most pivotal battles from Alexander the Great's conquest of the Persian Empire, specifically focusing on those that really shaped European history. Picture this: a young, ambitious Alexander versus the vast Persian Empire. Talk about a clash of ancient superpowers. Now, I know you, military history buffs out there, are interested in not just the tactics, but the lasting impact of these conflicts on the world as we know it. Oh, absolutely. These weren't just battles, they were turning points, moments that reshaped borders, cultures, even the very course of Western civilization. Exactly, it's about the big picture, right? So let's kick things off with the aftermath of the Battle of Aetius. We've got Darius III, the Persian king, hightailing it out of there, leaving his family behind. I'll talk about a personal embarrassment, but strategically speaking, this had huge implications. You can imagine the shock of the Persian troops seeing their king flee. Darius's flight was a major blow to their morale. And for Alexander, the capture of the Persian royal women, including Darius's mother, wife, and daughter, was a delicate situation. It could have been a disaster waiting to happen. But Alexander, surprisingly, didn't treat them as spoils of war. No, that's where things get interesting. Instead of the brutality you might expect, he shows them respect, ensures their safety, even provides attendance. It seems like a small act of chivalry, but I have a feeling there's more to it. Oh, absolutely. This was a calculated move, a stroke of genius, really. Alexander wanted to rule Persia, not just conquer it. By showing respect for the royal women, he was contrasting himself with Darius, presenting himself as a just and honorable leader, maybe even a legitimate successor to the throne. It's like something out of a play, right? And then there's Gaugamela, Darius's mother. What a remarkable woman, can you imagine? The mother of the defeated king essentially adopting the very man who conquered her son. She was incredibly shrewd. Gaugamela recognized Alexander's ambition and saw an opportunity. By adopting him, she strategically positioned him as a potential heir, a legitimate successor in Persian eyes. It protected her family, but also subtly reinforced Alexander's claim to the throne. And it wasn't just a temporary thing, right? Later on, after Darius was killed, Gaugamela declared Alexander her only son. Talk about long-term strategy. It seems Alexander's act of chivalry really paid off, securing him a powerful ally within the Persian royal family itself. It really shows the power of psychological warfare and strategic thinking. Alexander wasn't just winning battles, he was winning hearts and minds, even within the enemy's camp. But Darius wasn't giving up without a fight. He tries to negotiate peace, sending letters offering increasingly generous terms, even offering to split the empire in half. Why not take the deal? He could have avoided so much bloodshed and gotten a vast kingdom. These peace offerings showed Darius's desperation, but also highlight Alexander's ambition. He wasn't interested in compromise. He famously declined, saying, "If I were Parmenion, I would accept, but I am Alexander." A bold statement, wouldn't you say? He wanted total victory. So on he goes, fueled by ambition, conquering cities like Tyre and Gaza. These sieges must have been brutal. What can you tell us about their significance? They really demonstrate Alexander's military tenacity. Tyre, an island city, was a logistical nightmare, requiring innovative tactics and relentless determination. Gaza, positioned on the coastal route to Egypt, was another key victory, securing Alexander's supply lines. These were crucial stepping stones in his conquest of the Persian Empire. And then comes Egypt. Alexander marches in, not as a conqueror facing fierce resistance, but almost as a liberator. Why the difference in reception? Egypt had been under Persian rule for years and was ripe for rebellion. They saw Alexander as a chance to break free from their oppressors, which allowed for relatively peaceful takeover. It was a strategic boon for Alexander, letting him focus on his next big confrontation with Darius. And what does he do to solidify his presence in Egypt? He founds the legendary city of Alexandria, right at the mouth of the Nile. It wasn't just a city, it was a statement, a monument to his growing power and vision for a connected world. Absolutely, Alexandria's location was brilliant. Positioned at the crossroads of major trade routes, it was destined to become a global hub, a beacon of Alexander's expanding empire. And here we see the long-lasting impact of Alexander's conquests. Not just military victories, but the reshaping of the geopolitical landscape. He wasn't just conquering, he was building, creating legacies that would endure for centuries. Exactly, and think about the Lighthouse of Alexandria, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, guiding ships with its colossal beam. And then, of course, the Library of Alexandria, envisioned as a repository of all knowledge. Those weren't just vanity projects, they were investments in the future. A future where his empire would be a center of learning, commerce, and power. Which brings us to the grand showdown, the Battle of Gaugamela, the clash of titans where Alexander and Darius would finally meet in a decisive confrontation to decide the fate of the Persian Empire. And Darius, having learned from his previous defeats, had meticulously prepared. He seemed to have the upper hand this time. Open terrain, negating the tight spaces that hampered him at Aetius, a larger army fueled by a desire to defend their homeland, and a secret weapon. Scythed chariots, terrifying war machines designed to cut through enemy ranks. Scythed chariots, with blades mounted on the wheels. Can you imagine the chaos they were intended to inflict? Darius was determined to make this a decisive battle. He was, but he vastly underestimated Alexander's ability to adapt and innovate. Before the battle even started, Alexander engaged in psychological warfare. He spread rumors of a night attack, keeping the Persian army on edge all night while his own troops rested and prepared. The classic example of combining military might with strategic cunning. He knew victory depended on outsmarting your opponent, exploiting every advantage. So to us, how did this clash of empires, of armies, of tactics and technologies unfold? Well, the Battle of Gaugamela was a chaotic and brutal affair, thousands upon thousands of soldiers clashing. Darius unleashed his scythed chariots, hoping to break through Alexander's lines and sow panic. But Alexander had anticipated this. He had trained his troops to open their ranks, creating lanes for the chariots to pass through harmlessly. It must have been a terrifying moment for his soldiers watching these chariots thunder through, blades whirling. But the strategy worked. Deprived of their intended impact, the chariots lost their momentum. Wow, what a picture that paints. It speaks to Alexander's tactical genius, not just reacting, but anticipating and preparing. Exactly. This adaptability, the hallmark of a great military mind, allowed him to seize the initiative. He launched a counterattack, leading his companion cavalry straight towards Darius, straight into the heart of the enemy lines. Was that reckless abandon or calculated risk? A calculated risk for sure, but one that could have easily backfired. The sources describe a fierce struggle, a whirlwind of dust and steel, as Alexander's cavalry met the Persian immortals, Darius's elite guard. For a moment, the battle hung in the balance, and then fate intervened. Fate, you say? In the form of a well-aimed javelin, perhaps. I can't help but think of that pivotal moment that shifts the course of the battle. Yes, as Alexander's cavalry battled the immortals, his javelin struck Darius's charioteer. It seems like a small thing, but this incident sent shockwaves through the Persian ranks. Some believed Darius himself had been slain, and panic started to spread. So not so much Darius fleeing in terror, as some accounts suggest, but more a ripple effect of fear and uncertainty that leads to the Persian army's collapse. That's a great way to put it. The immortals faltered, seeing their king's chariot in disarray, their morale shattered, and that spread to the rest of the army. The tide had turned. It's amazing how one javelin strike could have such a profound impact on such a massive battle. It really highlights the importance of morale and psychological warfare in ancient warfare. Absolutely. Gaugamela, like many ancient battles, wasn't just about tactics and technology. It was also about psychology, leadership, and the ability to inspire and to instill fear. Alexander excelled at all of these. So Darius is defeated, deserted by his troops, and flees the battlefield, marking the end of his reign and the beginning of Alexander's dominance. What became of Darius after this crushing defeat? He tried to rally his remaining forces, but he was betrayed and assassinated by his own men. A tragic end for a ruler who had once commanded a vast empire. When Alexander learned of Darius's death, he pursued and captured Bessus, the man responsible. I'd imagine Alexander the Conqueror would revel in this victory, exact revenge on the man who betrayed his former king. But somehow I think there's more to the story. You're right. Instead of a brutal execution, Alexander gave Darius a grand funeral, burying him with full honors in the royal tombs. It seems out of character for a conqueror, but it was a brilliant political move. Ah, I see. By honoring his fallen enemy, he was making a statement, presenting himself not just as a conqueror, but as a legitimate successor, someone who respected Persian traditions and sought to unify this vast new empire he now controlled. Precisely. This act of respect helped quell any resentment among the Persians and solidified his image as a just and rightful ruler, further strengthening his position and ensuring a smoother transition of power. So Gaugamela was more than just a military victory, it was a pivotal moment in history. The end of the Persian Empire, a superpower that had dominated the region for centuries. It paved the way for Alexander's continued eastward expansion, spreading Greek culture and influence across vast new territories. Think about the implications for European history. Alexander's conquests, his victories at Aetius, Tyre, Gaza, culminating in Gaugamela, opened up trade routes, facilitated cultural exchange between East and West, and planted the seeds for the Hellenistic period, a golden age that profoundly impacted Western civilization. Amazing to think how these ancient battles, fought thousands of years ago, continue to shape our world today. The echoes of Alexander's ambition, his military brilliance, and his vision for a connected world can still be felt everywhere, in our cultural landscape, on the geopolitical map, even in the fabric of our societies. And it wasn't just about military might, it's also about cultural exchange and assimilation. We know Alexander adopted elements of Persian culture, even encouraging his Macedonian companions to marry Persian noblewomen. This wasn't just a quirk, it was a deliberate policy aimed at creating a unified and harmonious empire. A fascinating point. It suggests that Alexander, despite his battlefield ambition and ruthlessness, understood that true power lies not just in conquering lands, but in winning over hearts and minds. A lasting empire needed more than military strength. It needed cultural understanding, a blending of traditions. Exactly. It's a lesson that many leaders throughout history have failed to grasp. Alexander seemed to understand that a truly successful empire required more than brute force. It needed a deft hand, a subtle touch, a willingness to embrace and integrate the cultures of those he conquered. So from the aftermath of Aetius to the triumph at Gaugamela, we've witnessed a series of pivotal events that shaped the destiny of nations and the course of history. But Alexander's journey didn't end there. Driven by a restless ambition, he pushed further eastward to explore new lands and conquer new frontiers. And that's where we'll pick up in our next segment. We'll delve into Alexander's campaigns in India, his encounters with new cultures, his battles with powerful new enemies. We'll explore the limits of his ambition, the challenges he faced, and the ultimate legacy of his extraordinary life. Welcome back. We left off with Alexander, driven by his relentless ambition, pushing east into India, beyond the Persian Empire. But he needed another challenge. What was it about India that drew him in? It seems he wanted to reach the ends of the earth. He saw himself as more than a conqueror, almost an explorer, pushing the boundaries of the known world. But India wasn't just empty land waiting to be claimed. It had powerful kingdoms, fierce warriors of its own. Oh, absolutely. His campaigns in India were some of his most challenging. Think King Porus, with a formidable army. War elephants and all. Wait, boar elephants? That's a whole different kind of battlefield. How did Alexander's troops even handle that? The Battle of the Hydaspes River, where they clashed, was one of Alexander's bloodiest battles. The Macedonians, though surprised at first, adapted. They used missiles, exploited the elephants' vulnerability to confusion, and relied on their own agility. Sounds like a real David and Goliath situation, but with a lot more strategy involved. Definitely a testament to their adaptability, but even in victory, there were signs of strain. They'd been campaigning for years, far from home, facing constant hardship. Makes sense. Even the toughest soldiers have their limits. Who did this affect Alexander's grand plans? The Indian campaign was a turning point. His army, exhausted and homesick, refused to go further. Despite his ambitions, Alexander had to acknowledge the limits of his power. Even he couldn't force them on. A humbling moment for a man who seemed unstoppable up to that point. Shows that even the greatest conquerors are bound by the human limitations of their followers. It was the beginning of the end for Alexander's eastward expansion. He died in Babylon a few years later, only 32 years old. A lot accomplished in such a short life. Amazing to think how much impact he had. Despite his untimely death, his vast empire, although short-lived, really left a mark on history. The fusion of Greek and Eastern cultures he started gave rise to the Hellenistic period, a vibrant time of intellectual and artistic exchange. Its influence on Western civilization was immense. We still see it today. So from the battlefields of Persia to the banks of that river in India, Alexander's conquest changed the ancient world's map. He was more than just a conqueror. He was a visionary, a cultural force, a figure whose actions still spark debate thousands of years later. His legacy is multifaceted. A military genius, a shrewd politician, or ruthless conqueror, but also someone driven by an insatiable curiosity, a thirst for knowledge. He envisioned a world united by culture and understanding. That's what makes him so fascinating to study, the blend of ambition, brilliance, and ruthlessness. Alexander shows the contradictions within human nature, the capacity for great and terrible things. And it's a reminder that history is not a simple tale. It's woven with shades of gray, a complex story of human triumphs and failures. Alexander embodies all of that. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the world of Alexander the Great. I hope you've enjoyed the journey exploring the battles, the strategies, and the lasting impact of this remarkable figure. Until next time, keep exploring history and asking those tough questions.